If this happens, the narcissist is still obsessed with you, even if they act indifferent, distant, or completely gone. We often think obsession looks like 100 missed calls, but true obsession is silent. It's a war fought in the mind. They didn't follow. You assumed it was over. Carl Jung observed that what the unconscious cannot resolve, it fixates on, and sometimes fixation begins not with collapse, but with restraint. There is one specific psychological moment that reveals whether you were ever truly released. Not because you mattered to their ego, but because you exposed something it could never control. In this video, we uncover that moment and why once it happens, the power dynamic quietly shifts without you saying a single word. It all starts with the moment you stopped playing your role. They waited for a breakdown. You walked off the stage without even stumbling. The obsession begins not with the fact that you left, but with the specific manner in which you left. Most people misunderstand what actually makes a narcissist panic. We often assume they are shocked by abandonment, but the truth is, they are accustomed to people leaving. They are familiar with breakups. They know the script of the tearful exit, the screaming match, the desperate pleading for closure. These scenarios, while unpleasant on the surface, are actually comforting to the narcissistic structure because they follow a predictable law of cause and effect.
But what happens when the cause yields no effect? What happens when the gun is fired and there is no sound? This silence is what breaks the machine.
In their world, they are the cause and you are the effect. If they hurt you, you're supposed to bleed. If they discard you, you're supposed to chase. If they betray you, you're supposed to collapse. This reaction confirms their position of power. It validates their existence as the central force in your universe. The obsession is triggered only when you violate this law. It happens when you leave without falling apart. When you walk away with emotional stability, you break the core algorithm of the narcissistic interaction. You did not beg. You did not demand to be understood. You did not collapse into a heap of insecurity. Instead, you exhibited what Jung might describe as the integration of the self. You stood in your own reality, independent of their influence. This calm withdrawal signals something terrifying to the narcissist. You do not need them to survive. For a personality structure built entirely on the dependency of others, your independence is an act of aggression. It is not aggressive in the sense of violence or volume. It is aggressive in the sense of truth. Your stability forces them to confront the reality that they are not the sun around which you orbit. You are a sovereign entity capable of generating your own gravity. The narcissist cannot process this data. In their mind, they are the main character, and you are a supporting role designed to reflect their importance. When the supporting character walks off the stage without waiting for a cue and does so without stumbling, the play falls apart. They are left standing alone under the spotlight, waiting for a line that never comes. There was a moment when you finally walked away. You might have been sitting in the living room and they were trying to pick a fight, using the same old triggers that used to make you cry or scream. But this time, you didn't react. You didn't raise your voice. You simply looked at them, realized the cycle was never going to end, and decided to step out of it. You packed your bags calmly. You stated your boundary clearly. You left without the explosion they were bracing for. That specific moment of calm is where the fracture in their ego structure occurs. Jung described the persona as a mask designed to make a definite impression upon others and to conceal the true nature of the individual. The narcissist's persona is rigid, yet paradoxically fragile. It requires constant maintenance through your emotional submission. When you leave with dignity, you strip the persona of its primary fuel source. They cannot reconcile the image they have of themselves as the all-powerful, irresistible force with the reality of your indifference. If they were truly all-powerful, you would be devastated. The fact that you are not devastated creates a cognitive dissonance that they cannot resolve. That's where the obsession begins. They are not replaying memories of your time together with fondness. They are replaying the moment of your departure, examining it frame by frame, looking for the crack in your armor. They are searching for the sign of weakness they missed. Your emotional self-containment is an injury to them. It denies them the satisfaction of being the destroyer. If they cannot destroy you, they cannot feel superior to you. And if they cannot feel superior, they do not know who they are. Your withdrawal creates a vacuum. Your anxiety soothed their anxiety. Your tears validated their power. When you withdraw that energy, the vacuum remains. They are left with their own unresolved internal chaos, which they have spent a lifetime avoiding. The obsession at this stage is a form of survival instinct. They are trying to figure out how to regain control over an object that has suddenly developed a will of its own. They view your autonomy as a malfunction in the system. They believe that if they can just apply the right pressure, the system will reset, and you will revert to being the dependent source of supply they remember. But you have changed. You have stepped out of the role of the victim and into the role of the observer. This shift is irreversible. Once you have seen the mechanism behind the curtain, you cannot unsee it. And once they realize you have seen it, their obsession deepens. They are waiting for the crash. They are watching from the shadows, expecting your facade of strength to crumble. They tell themselves that it is only a matter of time before you reach out, before you break, before you admit that you cannot live without them. But the crash does not come. This persistence of your stability is what drives the obsession from a temporary annoyance into a chronic psychological fixation. They cannot close the chapter because the ending does not fit their story. If you recognize yourself in the moment you didn't collapse, make sure to subscribe to the Zero Mind channel for those who are done playing a role and ready to stay conscious. In the next part, we'll look at what actually disappears when you leave and why that absence destabilizes them in a way nothing else can. Most survivors ask the wrong question. Do they miss me? The answer is a hard no, but they miss something far more critical to their survival than your love. And once you understand what it is, you will hold all the power. The moment you stop seeing the relationship as emotional, the obsession starts to make sense. You likely viewed yourself as a partner, a lover, a spouse, or a best friend. You viewed the relationship through the lens of human connection. But in the strict economy of the narcissistic psyche, you served a specific and vital utility. You were not a person, you were a mirror. Carl Jung posited that the ego exists only in relation to the self and to the external world. For a healthy individual, the sense of value is gradually internalized. The narcissist lacks this internal structure. Their inner world is a barren landscape, often described by Jungian analysts as an existential void. There is no solid core, no generated self-worth, and no stable identity. To compensate for this emptiness, they construct a false self, a grandiose exterior that simulates confidence and power. But this false self is not self-sustaining. It has no internal battery. It relies entirely on external reflection to maintain its shape. This is where you enter the equation. You provided the energy required to keep the simulation running. You were the external surface upon which they projected their ideal image. When you looked at them with admiration, they felt admirable. When you looked at them with fear, they felt powerful. When you looked at them with pain, they felt significant. You were the proof of their existence. When you leave the relationship, you do not simply remove your physical presence. You remove the reflection. This is a catastrophic event for the narcissistic ego. Without the mirror, they cannot see themselves. They lose their orientation in the world. Imagine you are walking into a bathroom to wash your face. You look up at the mirror, expecting to see your own eyes, but instead, you see a black void. Nothing looks back at you. You would feel a sudden, jarring sense of disorientation. This is the psychological state of the narcissist when you withdraw. They are not missing your personality. They are missing the function you performed. Once you see this, their behavior stops feeling confusing. They do not miss the conversations, the intimacy, or the connection in the way you might. They miss the stability that your reactions provided. They miss the feeling of being anchored in reality by your attention. When you leave without collapsing, you take the mirror with you. You refuse to reflect their grandeur back to them. You refuse to reflect their power. You refuse to reflect their victimhood. You simply stop reflecting. This loss of supply creates a crisis of identity. The narcissist relies on external objects to regulate their self-esteem. Jung suggested that when the individual cannot find value within, they become possessed by the need to extract it from without. The obsession you sense is the frantic groping of a drowning person trying to find a surface to hold on to. You might notice that they try to provoke you even after the breakup. They might send an angry message, make a false accusation, or do something deliberately hurtful. You interpret this as hatred or anger, but functionally, it is an attempt to clean the mirror. They are trying to get a reaction, any reaction, to see their reflection again. Think about a time they did something petty shortly after you left, like keeping a small item of yours or spreading a minor rumor. Your instinct was to call them and argue, but if you argue, you are reflecting their significance. If you get angry, you are reflecting their power. Even if you cry, you are reflecting their impact. But when you do not react, the mirror remains dark. This is terrifying to them. It forces them to gaze into the abyss of their own non-existence. The obsession drives them to constantly check if the mirror is still working. They are not looking for you. They are looking for the reflection of themselves in your life. They want to see that you are broken because your brokenness reflects their power. They want to see that you are angry because your anger reflects their importance. If they look and see that you are happy, calm, and moving forward, the mirror fails them. It reflects nothing back to them but their own irrelevance. This is the ultimate narcissistic injury. It confirms that their existence was not essential to yours. In their mind, you never belong to yourself. You belong to them, not as a person with rights and feelings, but as an object with a function. Jung spoke of participation mystique, a state of unconscious identification where a person cannot distinguish themselves from the object of their obsession. They feel that you are a part of their own psyche, an extension of their own arm. When you detach, it feels like an amputation. They cannot process the idea that the mirror has a life of its own. They cannot comprehend that you exist outside of your function to serve them. This cognitive limitation keeps them stuck in a loop of confusion and rage. They are trying to solve a puzzle that has no solution within their framework. The void they face is not just loneliness, it is the threat of annihilation. Without the external supply of admiration or control, their false self begins to starve. The grandiose image they have built starts to crack, revealing the undeveloped, frightened shadow underneath. They are obsessed because you hold the key to their stability and you have refused to turn it in the lock. You have walked away with the very thing they need to feel real. They are stranded in a psychological desert, and you were the only source of water. They are not chasing you because they love the water. They are chasing you because they are dying of thirst. If this changed the way you see the relationship, comment one word: seen. Because once you recognize the role, you can't step back into it. In the next part, we will explore what happens when the mirror goes dark, and the terrifying things that begin to move in the silence. To a narcissist, silence is not peace. Silence is the moment their shadow wakes up. Most people are taught that silence means weakness. We are taught that doing nothing is a form of surrender, or that walking away quietly means letting the other person win. But in the context of a narcissistic dynamic, silence is the most active, aggressive, and disruptive force you can deploy. It is not an absence of action, It is a withdrawal of fuel. It is the removal of the atmosphere they need to breathe. When you go no contact, or when you maintain a state of grey rock indifference, you are not punishing the narcissist in the traditional sense. You are reconfiguring the environment in which their ego operates. You are stripping away the noise that allows them to hide from themselves. The narcissist's entire personality structure is designed to keep their shadow at bay. Carl Jung defined the shadow as the unconscious part of the personality which the conscious ego does not want to acknowledge. It contains everything the narcissist despises about themselves: their deep-seated insecurity, their shame, their weakness, their dependency, and their mediocrity. To keep the shadow repressed, the narcissist needs constant external noise. They need drama, they need conflict, they need your praise, your defense, your explanations, or your rage. This external stimulation acts as a distraction. It keeps their attention focused outward, away from the darkness within. It functions like a loud television left on in an empty house to keep the silence away. When you enter a state of true silence, not the manipulative silence of the silent treatment, but the sovereign silence of disengagement, you remove the distraction. You turn off the television. Suddenly, there is no conflict to win. There is no reaction to manipulate. There is no stage upon which to perform. The theater is empty, and the lights are out. In this silence, the narcissist is left alone with their shadow. This is the source of their obsession. They are not obsessed with you because you are silent. They are obsessed because your silence forces them to hear the internal voice they have spent a lifetime drowning out. The shadow begins to rise. Without your validation to prop up their grandiose self-image, the repressed feelings of inferiority bubble to the surface. They begin to feel the gnawing suspicion that they are not special, that they are not powerful, and that they are not in control. Jung warned that when the shadow is not integrated, it is projected. But projection requires a screen. You were the screen. When you remove yourself, the projection has nowhere to land. It bounces back onto them. They are forced to feel their own shame, their own fear, and their own emptiness. This experience is intolerable for them. It feels like a psychological death. They experience a form of disintegration anxiety. They feel as though they are falling apart because the external scaffolding that held them together, you, has been removed. The obsession you perceive is their desperate attempt to re-establish the noise. They need you to speak. They need you to react. They need you to break the silence so they can stop hearing the shadow. The messages usually come in the middle of the night, oscillating between "I miss you" and "You are the worst person I've ever met." They are not communicating information. They are trying to provoke a discharge of energy. They are throwing rocks at a frozen lake, trying to crack the ice. They are trying to jumpstart the engine of the relationship because the silence is suffocating them. Your silence acts as a mirror for their shadow. It reflects their lack of control. It reflects their inability to affect you. Every text you do not answer, every phone call you let go to voicemail, and every accusation you ignore amplifies the volume of their internal insecurity. They begin to ask dangerous questions in the privacy of their own minds. If I am not reflected, do I exist? If I cannot control this person, do I have power? If they are fine without me, was I ever important? These questions strike at the root of the narcissistic delusion. They expose the fragility of the false self. The narcissist knows on a deep unconscious level that they are dependent on you. Your silence is the proof of that dependence. You are fine. They are spiraling. You are calm. They are frantic. The power dynamic has completely inverted. You, who were once the supplier, are now the gatekeeper. You hold the silence that they cannot break. This activation of the shadow causes them to act out in erratic ways. They may oscillate between rage and victimhood. One moment they are attacking you, the next they are posting sad songs and cryptic quotes about betrayal. These are the thrashings of an ego trying to escape its own darkness. They are terrified of exposure, not necessarily exposure to the public, though that scares them too, but exposure to themselves. They do not want to see who they are without the mask. Your silence forces them to look. The obsession is driven by fear. It is the fear of the void. They look at your silence and see a black hole that threatens to swallow their identity. They must fill that silence with something, anything, to keep the shadow from taking over. But because you do not cooperate, they cannot resolve the tension. The shadow remains active, whispering their insecurities to them day and night. You become the symbol of their internal failure. You are the one who saw behind the curtain and walked away unimpressed. This is why they cannot simply move on. To move on would require them to process the emotions of the breakup, but they cannot process emotion. They can only suppress it or project it. With you gone, the suppression mechanism is broken. The silence you have created is not empty. It is full of the truth they cannot bear to face. In the next part, we'll look at the speed of what they do next and why the person who appears isn't there to love, but to stabilize. When a narcissist replaces you quickly, it looks like moving on. Psychologically, it's the opposite. It's emergency anesthesia. One of the most painful aspects of the aftermath is the speed of replacement. You may find that within days or weeks of your departure, the narcissist has a new partner. They are posting photos, declaring their love, and acting as if they have found their soulmate. This speed is designed to hurt you, but its primary function is not about you at all. It is about survival. There is a dangerous misconception that replacement equals moving on. In a healthy psyche, moving on is a process of integration. You grieve the loss, you process the lessons, you heal the wounds, and eventually you open yourself to a new connection. This takes time. It takes introspection. The narcissist does not have time. They do not have the capacity for introspection. As we established, your departure left them staring into the void of their own shadow. The pain of this exposure is excruciating. They require immediate relief. The new person is not a relationship. The new person is anesthesia. In medical terms, anesthesia is used to block sensation. It allows the body to endure trauma without feeling pain. The narcissist uses the new supply to block the sensation of the void. They need someone, anyone, to stand in front of the mirror and tell them they are real. This is why the replacement is often chosen so quickly and seemingly at random. The criteria for the new supply are not compatibility, depth, or connection. The criteria are availability and malleability. They need someone who is easy to charm, easy to control, and quick to reflect their false self back to them. Jung observed that when an individual cannot face their own inner content, they will desperately latch onto external objects to maintain their equilibrium. The narcissist grabs the new partner like a drowning man grabs a piece of driftwood. It is not about the driftwood, it is about keeping their head above water. The speed of the replacement is evidence of their instability, not their recovery. A person who is whole does not need to rush into a new attachment. A person who is fragmented needs glue immediately. The new supply is not experiencing a love story. They are being conscripted into a role. They are being asked to perform the function you vacated. They are the new mirror. But there is a fatal flaw in this strategy. The replacement cannot recreate the specific dynamic you shared. The narcissist is still obsessed with you because the wound you inflicted, the wound of leaving without collapse, is still open underneath the bandage of the new relationship. The new partner provides distraction, but they do not provide resolution. The narcissist is still carrying the unresolved energy of your sovereignty. They are still trying to prove to themselves that they have power. This leads to a phenomenon where the narcissist uses the new supply to triangulate with you. They will make sure you see how happy they are. They will amplify their public displays of affection. They are performing for an audience of one, you. If they were truly happy, they would not need to broadcast it. Contentment is quiet. The loudness of their new relationship is a measure of its hollowness. They are trying to convince themselves that they have won. They are trying to overwrite the memory of your departure with new images of adoration. Imagine you see a post where they are using the same captions, visiting the same places, or doing the same activities they did with you, but with someone else. It feels like a mockery. But psychologically, it is a repetition compulsion. They are trying to restage the play, hoping for a different ending where they remain in control. But beneath the surface, the comparison game is running constantly. The narcissist is comparing the new supply's compliance to your defiance. They are comparing the ease of the new control to the challenge of your independence. Ironically, your absence makes you more powerful than the person who is present. The new supply is easily controlled, which makes them boring to the narcissist in the long run. You, who cannot be controlled, remain the object of fascination. The replacement is a drug. It provides a temporary high, a temporary boost to the ego. But like any drug, the effects wear off. The underlying issues, the lack of self, the fear of the shadow, the inability to connect, remain untouched. The anima, or animus projection, the idealized image of a partner, is slapped onto the new person. But because it is a projection, it will eventually slip, and the devaluation will begin. This is why the obsession persists even while they are in a new relationship. You may notice they still check your profile or talk about you to the new partner, negatively of course. You are still taking up space in their psyche because the replacement did not solve the problem of you. The problem of you is that you invalidated their delusion. A new person agreeing with the delusion does not erase the fact that you disagreed. You stand as a historical fact that disproves their omnipotence. Do not be fooled by the images of domestic bliss. The narcissist has simply reset the cycle with a new participant. The love-bombing phase is in full effect, but the devaluation is inevitable. The new person is not special. They are just next. You are not replaced. A function was replaced. A mirror was replaced. But the impact of your withdrawal remains a unique scar on their ego. They are trying to numb the pain of that scar with the dopamine of a new conquest. In the next part, we will uncover the invisible way they keep holding on, even when they never say a word to you. When direct contact ceases, many people make the mistake of assuming the connection is severed. You believe that because your phone is silent, the narcissist has let go. You believe that no contact means no obsession. This is a dangerous assumption. In the digital age, obsession does not require presence. It only requires access. When the narcissist can no longer control your reality directly, they shift to controlling their perception of your reality. They enter the phase of silent monitoring. This is a form of surveillance designed to answer a single burning question. Are you suffering? The narcissist monitors you to gather intelligence. They are looking for data points that confirm their worldview. They need to know that you are miserable without them. They need to see sad status updates, angry posts, or signs of decline in your appearance or lifestyle. If they find these signs, they experience a rush of relief. Your suffering validates their importance. It confirms that they were the vital element in your life, and that without them, you are nothing. This soothes the injury caused by your departure. It patches the hole in the ego. But if they monitor you and find stability, the injury deepens. If they see you living your life, succeeding in your career, looking healthy, or simply being quiet and dignified, it triggers a fresh wave of shame and rage. Your well-being is a direct insult to their ego. It proves that they were not the source of your life. Perhaps they were the obstacle to it. Jung spoke of the objective psyche, the reality of the soul that exists outside of our conscious control. The narcissist wants to believe they control the objective psyche of everyone around them. When they watch you from afar and see you thriving, they are forced to confront the limits of their power. This silent monitoring is compulsive. They cannot stop. They may create fake social media profiles, use anonymous viewing tools, or interrogate mutual acquaintances. They are hunting for supply in the crumbs of your digital footprint. They avoid direct contact because the risk is too high. If they reach out and you ignore them, or worse, if you respond with indifference, it would be a catastrophic blow to their fragile self-esteem. They cannot risk another rejection. So, they watch from the shadows. This allows them to maintain a phantom connection without exposing themselves to the danger of your autonomy. In their mind, as long as they are watching you, they are still involved with you. They are still a participant in your life, even if you are unaware of it. At the core of this behavior is something they lack: emotional object constancy. The narcissist struggles to maintain a positive emotional bond with someone who is not physically present or gratifying their needs. But paradoxically, they also struggle to let go of the object entirely. You become a bad object in their mind, something that must be kept under surveillance to ensure it doesn't attack or surpass them. The obsession becomes internalized. They may have full conversations with you in their head. They may imagine what you are doing, who you are with, and what you are thinking. They project their own insecurities onto your image. If you are silent on social media, it drives them even crazier. The lack of data is agonizing. They fill the gaps with their worst fears. They imagine you are happier than you are. They imagine you are laughing at them. They imagine you have forgotten them completely. This monitoring serves another purpose. It prepares them for a potential return. They are assessing your defenses. They are looking for a moment of weakness, a bad day, a vulnerability, a crisis that might provide an opening for them to re-enter. But as long as you remain stable, they remain locked in a state of passive obsession. They are the ghost haunting a house that has already been sold. Think about the time you noticed a view on your story from a burner account, or a friend told you that your ex was asking about your job. You might have felt a chill, a sense of invasion. That invasion is real. It is the shadow of the narcissist trying to anchor itself to your light. They are energetic parasites who have been cut off from the host, but who are still hovering near the skin, waiting for a scratch. Reacting to this monitoring only feeds it. Changing your behavior turns you back into an audience. If you post things specifically to make them jealous, you are still in the relationship. You are still providing supply. The ultimate victory is to live your life as if they do not exist, because in your new reality, they don't. Their monitoring is a confession of their dependence. A person who is truly indifferent does not check the profile of an ex-partner 3 times a day. A person who has moved on does not create a fake identity to watch an Instagram story. Their eyes are on you because their self-worth is tied to your status. They are tethered to you by the cord of their own insecurity. In the next part, we'll see what they do when watching isn't enough, and control has to move inside the story they tell themselves. Before the narcissist rewrites your image publicly, they rewrite it internally. When the narcissist realizes that they cannot control your actions through direct contact, and when monitoring you from afar only confirms that you are doing well, they are forced to retreat to their final line of defense. They must control the narrative. They must rewrite the history of who you are. You will likely experience this phase as a smear campaign. You might hear from mutual friends that the narcissist is telling people you are unstable, abusive, or mentally ill. You might discover they are posting vague accusations on social media that paint them as the survivor and you as the villain. It is easy to interpret this behavior as a strategic attack designed to ruin your reputation. Though in the context of the narcissistic mind, this behavior is not an offensive strategy. It is a defensive reflex. It is an act of psychological survival. What happens next isn't random. It follows a very specific pattern.
The narcissist operates with a fragile ego structure that cannot withstand the weight of the truth. The truth of the situation is that you left them because their behavior was intolerable. The truth is that they lost control of the relationship because they lacked the capacity to maintain a healthy connection. The truth is that they are flawed, insecure, and responsible for the collapse. If the narcissist were to accept this truth, their entire false self would shatter. They would be forced to face the shadow, the dark, shameful parts of themselves they have spent a lifetime hiding. To avoid this psychological annihilation, the truth must be destroyed. It must be replaced with a fictional version of reality that keeps the narcissist safe and blameless. In this new fiction, the roles are completely reversed. You are cast as the aggressor, and they are cast as the victim. You are the one who is cold and unfeeling, and they are the one who loved too much. You are the one who is unstable, and they are the steady rock who tried to save you. This rewriting process relies heavily on a mechanism called projection. Projection is an unconscious defense where a person takes their own unwanted traits and attributes them to someone else. The narcissist feels deep internal shame about their own selfishness, so they accuse you of being selfish. They know they have been lying, so they accuse you of being dishonest. They feel internally chaotic and out of control, so they tell everyone that you are crazy or bipolar. This is not a random selection of insults. They are confessing their own sins by placing them on your shoulders. They do this to relieve the pressure of their own conscience. If you are the bad person, then they can continue to feel like the good person. If you are the problem, then they do not need to change. There's an important shift here. The narcissist is not just lying to others, they are lying to themselves. This is a phenomenon known as self-gaslighting. They repeat the lie with such intensity and frequency that they actually begin to believe it. They alter their own memories to fit the emotional needs of the present moment. It often plays out like this. There was an argument before you left. Perhaps they were yelling at you, insulting your character and backing you into a corner. Over time, you snapped. You raised your voice, or perhaps you started crying uncontrollably out of frustration. When the narcissist rewrites this history, they edit out their own behavior entirely. In their version of the story, the scene begins when you raised your voice. They describe your anger, your shouting, and your tears. They describe how calm they were in response. They leave out the hour of abuse that provoked your reaction. By removing the context, they turn your reactive abuse into proof of your instability. They tell this story to their friends with genuine conviction. I tried to talk to her, and she just exploded. She is totally unhinged. They believe this version because they need to believe it. It allows them to compartmentalize the loss of you. They can obsess over you without feeling the pain of their own failure. They can hate you, which is much easier than facing the fact that they ruined the best thing they had. This obsession manifests as ruminating hatred. They become fixated on the injustice of your departure. They recruit people to validate this distorted reality. They look for allies, friends, family members, or a new partner who will nod and agree with their story. Every person who agrees with them acts as a structural support beam for their crumbling ego. They cannot sustain the delusion alone. They need an audience to reflect it back to them. This creates a painful trap for you. When you hear the lies being told about you, your instinct is to defend yourself. You feel a burning desire to correct the record. You want to show the screenshots, play the recordings, and explain the context to everyone who will listen. You want to prove that you are innocent, but you must resist this urge. Defending yourself plays directly into their obsession. If you engage with their lies, you step back onto their stage. You confirm that their narrative still has power over you. You signal that you still care what they think. The narcissist wants a battle. They want a public conflict. As long as you are fighting them, you are still in a relationship with them. You are still providing them with energy. If you try to explain yourself to the people they have manipulated, you will often find that it is useless. These people have already accepted the narcissist's reality. By arguing with them, you often appear defensive or crazy, which unintentionally validates the narcissist's lies.
The most powerful response to the rewriting of your image is to let the wrong version of you exist.
This requires immense internal strength. You must reach a point of individuation where your self-worth is independent of your reputation in their world. You know who you are. You know what happened. You know the truth of your own character. That must be enough. By not fighting the narrative, you deny them the conflict they crave. They are trying to provoke a reaction to prove that they can still control your emotions. When you refuse to react, you leave them shouting into a void. They are telling a dramatic story with no antagonist. Without your participation, the story eventually runs out of steam. The audience gets bored. The inconsistencies in their lies start to show over time. And by not participating, you detach your identity from their projection. You refuse to accept the baggage they are trying to hand you. You leave them holding their own shame. The narcissist's obsession with smearing you is actually proof that you remain a significant threat to their ego stability. If you were truly insignificant, if you truly didn't matter, they would not waste their breath talking about you. Indifference produces silence. The fact that they are making so much noise means they are still trying to drown out the truth. They talk about you because they cannot stop thinking about you. They are trying to talk themselves into a reality where they are the winner. But deep down, in the quiet spaces where they cannot lie, they know. They remember the look in your eyes when you finally gave up. They remember the calm with which you walked away. And no amount of rewriting history can erase the feeling of absolute powerlessness they felt in that moment. In the next part, we will confront the final test, the moment they reach out directly, and why it isn't what it seems. The cycle of obsession inevitably leads to a final behavioral breaking point. When your silence has been deafening, when the replacement partner has failed to fill the internal void, and when the smear campaign has provided no relief to their anxiety, the narcissist is forced to take direct action. This behavior is known in psychological circles as hoovering. Here's the part most people misunderstand. Hoovering is not a return to the relationship. It is not an act of love, nor is it a sign of remorse. It is a control test. It is a calculated survival reflex triggered by the narcissist's need to confirm that you still exist within their sphere of influence. They need to know if the invisible cord that connects their ego to your emotions has been severed or if it is still intact. This behavior often occurs at a very specific moment in your recovery. You might notice that for months there was nothing. You began to heal. You regained your routine. You stopped thinking about them every hour. You finally reached a place of stability. Then, suddenly, a notification appears on your phone. The timing is rarely accidental. The narcissist possesses a hyper-awareness of your energetic withdrawal. When you are grieving and thinking about them constantly, they feel your energy feeding them, so they do not need to reach out. But when you truly let go, when you detach your focus from them and place it back on yourself, they feel a sudden drop in supply. They sense the loss of control. This creates an internal panic that compels them to reach out and check the connection. The form of the Hoover is designed to be low risk and high reward for them. They rarely call you to say, "I was wrong, I am sorry, and I want to fix this." That requires vulnerability. That requires them to admit fault. Instead, they use calculated ambiguity. They send messages that are vague enough to be denied later if you reject them, but intriguing enough to demand a response. A common real-life scenario involves the accidental or casual text. You might receive a message on a Tuesday afternoon that says, "I just passed that coffee shop we used to go to. Hope you're doing well." On the surface, this looks like a polite, harmless gesture from an ex-partner. But you must analyze the function of this message. It conveys no real information. It asks for nothing specific.
yet it places a heavy psychological burden on you. It forces you to pause your day and think about them. It forces you to interpret their intent. It forces you to make a decision. Do I ignore it and seem rude, or do I reply and risk opening the door? The ambiguity is the trap. If you do not reply, they can tell themselves you are just busy or that the message wasn't important. If you do reply, even with a simple "thanks," they have extracted what they needed. They have proven that you are still accessible. They have proven that they can still interrupt your life with a single sentence. Another common tactic is the crisis hoover. This occurs when the vague approach fails. They might reach out with urgency, claiming a medical emergency, a family death, or a severe depressive episode. They might say, "I have no one else to talk to," or "I really need your help right now." This tactic weaponizes your empathy. They know you are a caring person. They know you have a conscience. They use your morality against you to force a breach in your boundaries. But you must look at the reality of the situation. They have likely smeared your name to others, replaced you with someone else, and ignored your feelings for months. The fact that they return to you for comfort is not a compliment. It is a manipulation. They are not seeking support. They are seeking a reaction. They want to see if your guilt is still stronger than your self-respect. The narcissist is testing to see if the old buttons still work. If they press the guilt button, do you jump? If they press the anger button, do you scream? If they press the nostalgia button, do you soften? If you respond with anger, telling them to leave you alone and listing all the ways they hurt you, you might feel like you are standing up for yourself. But to the narcissist, this response is satisfactory. Anger is an intense emotion. It shows that they still have the power to disturb your peace. It shows that you are still emotionally invested in what they did. As long as you are angry, you are not indifferent. And as long as you are not indifferent, they still have a level of control. If you respond with politeness, engaging in small talk, you validate their delusion that the breakup wasn't that bad. You allow them to rewrite history where you are friends, which alleviates their shame. You give them permission to keep checking in, to keep tapping the glass of your life whenever they need a quick boost of attention. The Hoover often disguises itself as a desire for closure. They might ask to meet up, to explain things, or to get some things off their chest. This is perhaps the most dangerous trap of all. You go to the meeting hoping for an apology, hoping for the truth, hoping to finally understand why they treated you the way they did. But you will not get closure. You will get word salad. You will get circular arguments. You will get half-truths and blame shifting. They do not want to close the chapter. They want to reopen the book. They want to see you sitting across from them, looking at them, listening to them. That attention is the drug they are addicted to. The only response that fails the test, and therefore the only response that breaks the obsession, is silence. When you do not respond to the text, the email, or the crisis, you stop the flow of energy. You do not offer anger. You do not offer pity. You do not offer politeness. You offer nothing. This non-response triggers a profound psychological collapse in the narcissist. It confirms their obsolescence. It proves that they no longer exist in your internal world. The pulse they sent down the wire did not return. The circuit is dead. This is difficult because it feels like you are being cruel. It feels unnatural to ignore someone, especially someone you once cared for. But this is where the frame has to change. You are not being cruel to a person. You are setting a boundary against a disorder. You are refusing to participate in a cycle that requires your submission to function. When the Hoover fails, the narcissist is forced to face the existential void we discussed earlier. They cannot distract themselves with your reaction. They cannot soothe themselves with your attention. They are left alone with the reality that they have lost you completely. This is the moment the obsession hits a hard wall. It has nowhere else to go. They may try a few more times, escalating the intensity, but if the wall holds, they eventually retreat. They retreat not because they respect your boundary, but because they are starving. They must take their desperate need for supply elsewhere. The Hoover is the final exam of your healing process. It asks you a simple question. Do you remember who you are? If you answer by engaging, you forget yourself. If you answer with silence, you remember. You prove that your life is no longer a stage for their performance. You prove that the obsession was theirs alone. You prove that while they were stuck in the loop of the past, attempting to control a ghost, you were already walking toward the future, real and whole. The narcissist's obsession is not a testament to your connection. It is a symptom of their disorder. It is the mechanical grinding of a machine that has lost its operator. They watched you, smeared you, replaced you, and hoovered you, not because they loved you, but because they could not face the empty space where you used to stand. But that empty space is not your responsibility to fill. Your responsibility is to your own individuation, to becoming a whole, integrated person who does not need to be needed by a predator. The true end of the obsession comes when you no longer care if they are obsessed. It ends when their name no longer triggers a physical response in your body. It ends when you realize that they were just a lesson in what you are no longer willing to accept. If something in you knows the next step is already opening, don't leave this moment unfinished. Click on the next video and keep walking toward the life your unconscious has been trying to return you to.